I'm going to be showing you how to create this paw print painting in a stained glass style so that you can see that you only need some good value paint, some good canvases or paper, whatever it is, to create something that makes you truly excited and just celebrates the love you have for your pet. So let's get into it.
I'm starting out this project opening up my Chalkola Canva panel. It's an 8x10 measurement because I wanted to make it as easy as possible to start painting since I will be trying some new paints.
The first step in the process is to start sketching. I always recommend you start off extremely light and then darken it up as you need. The great thing about acrylics is that any of the markings, you can always cover them up with paint. So don't worry about how many times you have to do over the paw print to get that perfect size or shape. And also remember that paw prints, even on your own cat or your puppy, they're going to be different. We don't notice on our day-to-day, but each of their beings are actually unique. Once you're happy where your paw prints are and how they look, grab your ruler and start making lines. Don't worry too much about how perfect it is, how much it matches, or anything like that. This is a stained glass look that's just asymmetrical and just for fun. I personally like to do things leaning more towards one side than the other, which is why I started off making all of my lines connecting on the left bottom corner and then towards the rest. So do as many lines as you want. I would suggest not creating too many lines dissecting the toe beans because that's going to be more work for you. So maybe intersected once or twice, but don't get too crazy on the details around the toe beans. You want to use those empty spaces
because that will give you some comfort to make mistakes without feeling like you've ruined the whole painting. This is really a space for you to experiment the way that you use your brushes once we get into the painting.
And as you're making the lines, don't feel like you have to do a line all the way through. You do have the choice of using your ruler as a guide and then skip some of the boxes. So do some lines on the left side, do some lines on the right side. Remember that this is supposed to look like stained glass, so don't get too stuck on it being a perfect grid. Afterward, figure out which brushes you're going to be using for this project. I'm using the ones that came with my beginner's painting kit. Then go ahead and dabble on all of the colors that you want to start off with. I always recommend that you try to stay in the same color family or colors that you know that go well together. So in my case, I'm doing pinks and purples and a little bit of orange since I know that these colors generally look well together. Once you're ready to start painting, take a deep breath and choose in one of the straight brushes to do this project. It's going to make your life a lot easier. If you're feeling courageous and you were thinking of using something else, try it out on one of the bigger areas, so one of the bigger blocks of space, so that you can get a real feel of how that brush is able to be managed and turned and how it holds the paint and how you feel about continuing the project with it. By using this flat brush, I was able to make sure that all of the area around the edges was as straight as possible. If you do something like a smaller brush, that's going to result in one, way more time being spent than needed, and two, and it looking like you have smaller dots, so it's going to still require way more precision than if you stick with the flat brush. Notice that as I'm painting, there's not that much paint on the brush itself. It's just enough to get the color layered on the canvas. So I do this because if we put a whole bunch of paint just to try to save time because we don't want to do layers, then what you end up getting is like this clumpy lines on the canvas, and acrylics will dry out in those clumps. Like even as you continue painting this, you'll notice on your palette there are actual like bumps and lines that dried out just from paint that you didn't use. And you don't want to do that on your painting because that's going to take away from the quality of it. And whenever you see that you're making mistakes like this where you accidentally went a little over the line, don't stress over it. It's really fine. You're just going to choose another color to layer it on top. That's the great things about these acrylics, is that you can always fix your mistakes with another color because they will continue to layer on. Now, you do want to be strategic about how you start off your painting. So you'll notice that I did the pink, which is one of my lighter colors. So you want to go from light to dark, and also don't stick to a single area as you're doing it. In order for you to get like the full visual impact, to get the stained glass look, you want to grab a single color and paint a few boxes all over. Then grab the next color and paint some other boxes, and slowly you'll start to see it all come together. So you can see, maybe I need a lighter color on the right side, a darker color on the left, and figure out what it is. Now, the one thing I would really suggest is to use lighter color around your paw print, because that's going to make that black really pop. So those light purples, the oranges, the pinks are really great. Stay away from the darker colors. Now, because these are lighter colors, you will need to do multiple layers. And while you're looking at the details, also remember to paint the edges of your canvas. As a beginner, it's going to be way easier for you to do this as you're painting the front of the canvas. Keep it simple. Remember that this is just a relaxing project for you to create to celebrate the love you have for your dog or your cat. So don't get stressed, don't get frustrated. Save yourself all of that hassle and just do it the same color. Now, as we paint all of the toe beans, you'll notice that I do a range of doing some rounded edges, and I make the little circles, and at this point I'm just trying to get a defined shape. Remember that black is going to go right over it, so you don't need to worry too much about your beans being perfect. When it comes to putting the colors next to each other, this is where you just want to take your time, dabble one stroke at a time so that you don't accidentally go into the next. If you do, just remember it's just a straight line, so you can just extend that darker color into the lighter one and no one's going to know. And as you're waiting for something to dry, go ahead and just do another box in a different section. You don't want to try to layer on paint on wet paint, because it's just going to move it around. It's not going to make it darker. So this is where patience kicks in. Decide what colors should go next to which. So whenever you're selecting your color, you want to see what else is next to that box. So like that ultramarine color I'm using, if I had put it next to the purple, it would have looked like a single color. So you want to continue to try to create contrast in between one color and the next. When you're painting the larger areas, go ahead and dabble all of your paint towards the middle and then complete the edges. For the smaller sections, since you're not grabbing as much paint, that's when you can start around the edges. If you're making something really small, you can switch out to a smaller brush or just use the very tips of your brush, but it does require a lot of control. As you continue painting, remember to experiment different methods and techniques. So in this instance, I'm more concerned about trying to fill in the space with color instead of making a very distinctive toe bean shape. So you can also do the same, just try different styles and see what feels right for you, since black will cover the mistakes. When you're using acrylics, because they dry out so quickly, you want to go step by step on the colors. So first we did the pinks and the purples, and now we're doing the oranges and the yellows. So this is gonna give it some extra contrast within the painting while still looking cohesive. Out of all of the colors, the Chalkola, Indian yellow, rose, and pale mauve were my favorite. These three colors would probably make an amazing painting just all by themselves because they are all so different, but they also provide so much contrast and brightness compared to the pitch black paw print. So if you're not wanting to experiment with a lot of colors, you can choose and alternate between those three and you'll still come out with a beautiful painting. If you're using colors different from the ones that I am using, keep in mind that you still want to choose at least one color to bring up bright. So you want it to be a center of attention within your painting. So if you're using blues and greens, it could be something like a lime green. Or if you're doing something with oranges and reds, you can always choose a bright yellow for that additional pop of color, where it's going to just bring out the focus. You want something to bring some sense of lightness and airiness into your painting so it doesn't look like it's something sad, because the love you have for your pet, it's supposed to be something happy and positive or positive. If you do accidentally put too much paint in the area, don't worry. You can always clean up your brush, take off some of the paint, and then come back and pick it up using the same brush. So you can see that I spread all of that excess I had around the topping to the other areas and also to the edges of the Canva panel. Once you get to a point where your colors look similar, such as these two yellows, you want to use them as if they were exactly the same. What I mean by that is that you don't want to put them next to each other, because at a distance it's going to look like it's just a single color. So you want to take advantage of the other contrasting colors and separate them out. Remember to periodically take a look back and see how it all is looking so you know where to go next. In our case, our middle area was now looking bare, so now we could start adding in the colors now that we could see how the outside was done and how the colors played together. At this point, all of the other colors would have dried because acrylics dry within seconds, which makes it easier for you to know what looks right or wrong alongside each other. So that way you know to not repeat it in the middle, because all of the focus will be in the middle section. And you're going to want to judge yourself very harshly over all of the crooked lines, any missed straight lines, or just any mishaps that you have. But remember that it's all going to look okay once you get it all together. All of the colors will play into them, and you can't see all the small imperfections because they will blend. That was part of the key of why we're strategically choosing these colors. Turn around your Canva panel as needed. Don't feel like you have to be constricted to having it laying towards you. A lot of the times you do see a lot of painters that they will use a type of easel and they're able to just paint looking it straight forward. But as a beginner, the more abstract, the more you're able to detach yourself from the painting, it will actually help you become better at it. Just focus on the shapes that you're looking at. If you decide to make a blend of your own color and you don't like it, go ahead and add either a lighter color to make it light or a little bit more of that base color if you want to make it darker. In this case, I wanted something a little bit deeper to contrast the rose pink that we were using before. As you're going through, remember that it's okay to go back to your original colors. As you get closer to finishing it, you'll start noticing that you might need a little pop of color somewhere to tie it all together, and that's perfectly okay. So just adding colors as you feel like it. Don't be too concerned about how it's all going to come together. It will happen because you're choosing colors that naturally fit well. Remember that it's okay to make mistakes. It's going to happen, and it's just part of the process. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but I know one of my biggest fears when I started painting was making mistakes and they're not looking okay. And that's stopping for so long, and so many people just show you how beautiful and easy it is, and they don't show you the mistakes. And I want to contribute to just the ability that the happiness that painting can give you without feeling like you're not good enough with it, because you are. It's just a matter of continuing to be patient. It will all come together. You just have to trust the process and trust yourself. And if you don't like it at the end, if you really just hate it, that's okay. You can just start over a new panel. Panels that I'm using, they come in a set of 20. So this one, yes, it turned out okay, but my very first one, it came out horrible. And I was trying to do it on the fly, and it didn't work out. And that'll be a whole other painting that I'm going to be showing you on how to fix that horror story. But just know that right now you are seeing like some of the best of me painting. You're not seeing all of the struggles that I've gone through, but I hope that all of these tips do help you grow and improve and see how you can create your own artwork and celebrate that love and that positivity. Because in the world that we live in all of the chaos, regardless of what you do for a living or what stage of life you're in, being able to be creative really makes so much of a difference. And we all need to be able to express ourselves. And I know I sound like a cornball, but it's just really important because it's going to make us happier, and it's just going to create a more positive and kinder environment for us all to live in. Earlier on, I had said to not put the two types of yellows together, but it all depends on the shades as well and how many layers you add in. So it's really okay to break the rules once in a while if you feel that it's needed. So in my case, I thought that it was just way too dark and it needed some of the brightness. It's okay to put them next to each other once you're getting close, because you're able to really see how it's going to impact it. Same with these reddish colors and the dark oranges, where it's going to look similar but not the same. You'll start to run into the issue of not knowing what color to place next to the other if you made too many of those tiny, small area spaces for you to paint in. So that's why it's important for you to start off with big areas, especially around the paw prints, where you know you have to have lighter colors, and then do the details on the other sections. Because if it does turn out that you made too many smaller ones, you can always fill in all of those with the same color. So that way you don't have to worry about too many divisions. So in the section I painted right before this, I could have gone straight with the pink, and in this area I could have gone straight with both of the yellows instead of trying to do these smaller orange areas. Now I do want to point out that for these I did switch out into a smaller flat brush, which is what makes it easier to paint these. So I'm sticking with a flat brush because that is the easiest brush to use for this project, but you can use the different sizes to make your life a little bit less complicated. I am using the brush itself to mix the colors. I know some people like to use something else to blend them all together, but I find it easier to use the brush because one is less paint wasted, and two, I can ensure that all of the color looks the way that I want it to right away, so I can test it on the canvas. I'm not trying to dabble it into something else and then go back into the canvas and now it doesn't look right based on the different sections. So far in this project, I created that deeper pink and I created this lighter orange for me to use for the smaller details, because again, I'm trying to brighten up the painting because I keep focusing on how bright is important around the paw print, because I did make a mistake on this one, and you can see that I did a deep shade of purple that I think could have been another color. So I want to save you some of that trouble, and that's why I keep reiterating the importance of using lighter tones. Now these little things that I'm making with really small brush strokes, you can, like I said before, you can ignore those and just paint over with another color that you're making the bigger shape that's next to them, so that you don't have to worry about them. If you're a beginner, this is going to require some precision work. You can always try it and then go back in with that darker layer that's next to it and paint over it if you don't like the way that it looks, because it's not a straight line. At this point, because now I'm getting so close to the end, I don't want to put any more paint on the palette. So what I'm using is actually the cap of the paint itself to grab the color. And we'll continue to do this until we finish all of the smaller area. In this section, this is the mistake I pointed to earlier, where I got a little brush happy and I went over the box, and I did end up layering a lighter color next to it, but it's okay because that high contrast, it makes it less obvious. If this is something that really worries you though, just remember you can let it dry and keep adding more and more layers of that lighter color, and it will conceal that minor mistake. Once you're ready to start painting the toe beans and the paw prints, you want to switch into a brush with a rounded tip, because it will help you create that edge around the beans. So what I did was that I painted half of the bean essentially, making that first half circle or that curve, and then after move the canvas around so that I could do the other part, because this would allow me to continue on to the natural movement of my hand and the brush. So you never want to fight your instincts on the best way that you paint, because it's just going to make it more complicated. So figure out what works best. Maybe you do the bottoms first, or maybe you do the sides first, but continue to try different ones. You have 8 toe beans to try, so this is a good practice opportunity for you. You want to finish completing the rest of the beans so that it's all completely done and they're able to dry out after you finish doing the pads. This way you'll know for sure if you need to do any other layers of the black. Once you're ready to start painting your pads, you can either put all of the paint right in the middle, so you're going to have an excess of paint, and then spread it around the edges, or you can also use that excess to start doing the edges for your other pad. This will give you more flexibility. Because these are larger areas and they're both exactly the same, you don't need to worry so much about how you're moving the brush around. You're really trying to fill in the space. And again, this is another opportunity. If you didn't like the way your original bean was, you can always expand it a little bit more with the black. Just be very careful, because black is very hard to get rid of and it will take a lot of effort. So you want to take it slow so that you don't make any major mistakes. Remember to move your canvas around as much as needed, because the entire pad and beans are rounded on all edges. So it will make it more easy to create the defined black lines so that it doesn't look blurry around the edges. After you finish the black areas, you can go back and add more color if you feel that the colors are too light or they're uneven. Like this purple came out very uneven, so I needed to wait for it all to dry. But now that I had my black, I can clearly see which areas needed to be darkened up so that it looked better. This is how it came out. I love how vibrant everything is, and I hope you saw just how simple and easy this project can be. And you don't need to be a pro to make this. I'm not an acrylics person. I'm actually more of a watercolor person. So this was a true beginner's test on these paints and how they worked. And it was just a great experience, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you decide to make this project as well, please go ahead and share it with us. We would love to see what you come up with and what ideas you have. And yeah, just encourage each other, because creativity is just the best outlet for celebrating everything that's within you. So if you want to learn how to create a paw print using watercolor, you can go ahead and watch this video right here.